Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm wwII and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Škoda T50-49, which is the Cold War Škoda T50, and in Cold War it is a medium tank for the Eastern Alliance in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode, and it leads on from the absolutely horrific grind of the TVP-88, so hopefully this thing will be a very good tank in Era 1. It's a very good tank in World War II, so let's see how the stats stack up to its competitors in today's video, and I have two gameplays at the end for you to show you how this thing performs. It has a 100mm gun that has two viable options, the 3-shot autoloader or the single fire gun, and we're going to have a look at the stats of both of those guns. We're also going to take a look at my commander and equipment setup and how I recommend setting up and playing the Škoda T50. So if we head over here to the Excel spreadsheet, here I have put the stats of the Škoda T50. We're going to be comparing it to other starting tanks in Era 1, the Centurion Mark II, the M50 Sherman and the M47 Patton. They're very similar in terms of their hit points and their other stats, so we're going to see how the Škoda T50 stacks up. So if you haven't seen any of my reviews before, green is the best stat, red is the worst, orange is somewhere in between, and highlighted in yellow is the updated stats with my commander and equipment setup applied. So let's get stuck straight into talking about the Škoda T50. In terms of hit points, you can see that it is very low at 1650. This is the worst in this comparison. However, this is a starting tank in Era 1, so it's to be expected. It's also got the worst view range in this comparison at 450 meters, which you can boost up with a good sort of commander and equipment setup, but I guess it's kind of not really its thing is going forward and spotting due to the autoloader. If you play with that gun, you're going to be trying to ambush tanks and using the vision of your teammates, so I wouldn't worry about that too much, but it is a pretty low view range for the Cold War game mode. And now we'll get on to the mobility, and you'll see that there's lots of green, so that's fantastic news for the Škoda T50. It's the most mobile tank in this comparison compared to the Centurion Mark II, the M50 Sherman and the M47 Patton. It's got a whopping 1000 horsepower engine with a great power to weight ratio of 26.04. You can go 60 kilometers an hour forwards, 25 in reverse, which is very nice. Your hold traverse is great at 42 degrees a second, and your turret traverse is a little bit lower at 32 degrees a second, but you can boost that up with some of the gun handling skills, and I'll tell you what they are in just a bit. But if you can see in this comparison, it has the best horsepower, the power to weight, best forward and reverse speed, and also the best hold traverse. So much quicker than something like an M50 Sherman that has more hit points, but it has way worse mobility, and it's much better than the British Centurion Mark II and the American M47 Patton, and that power to weight ratio is absolutely brilliant. And because you are quite a large profile medium tank, you're going to need that power to weight and that top forward and reverse speed to get out of trouble and try and find somewhere to reload your 3 shells. So now we're going to get on to the gun then, and like I said at the start of the video, the Škoda T50 has a 100mm gun, and it has two different options. You have this 3-shot autoloader capable of dealing 960 damage, and your interclip reload is 1.8 seconds, so you get out those 3 shots in 3.6 seconds, so you are dealing 960 damage in 3.6 seconds, so it's a very good ambush tank indeed. And I'm going to show you the stats of the single fire gun on a different sheet in just a second and compare it to this 3-shot autoloader. But now we're going to compare this 100mm gun to the guns on the Centurion Mark II, which has a 20-pounder gun, the M50 Sherman, which has a 75mm gun, and the M47 Patton, which has a 105mm gun, and these are all the top packages on these tanks. So the Škoda T50 fires APCR as standard, heat as its secondary or premium ammunition choice, and HE as its third ammunition choice. The APCR has 1400 meters a second, which is very nice. The heat has 900 meters a second shell velocity, and the HE has 900 meters a second shell velocity as well. You have 248 millimeters of standard penetration, 310 millimeters of heat penetration, and 50 millimeters of HE penetration, and your damage is 320 per shell on your standard and premium rounds, and if you load the HE, you boost that up by 100 to 420 damage. So looking at this 100mm 3-shot autoloader in comparison to the guns on the other tanks, you can see that the standard rounds on the Škoda T50 have the best shell velocity by some way, which is fantastic for shooting at mid to long ranges, and you don't have to give too much lead at all. It also has the best standard penetration at 248mm and the best premium penetration at 310mm, but be warned, it is heat ammunition. It has one good aspect, that it doesn't lose penetration over distance, but it does have the worst shell velocity in this comparison, and it's not very good against spaced armor and tracks and things like that, so you do have to be very careful where you are shooting, but it can be useful to have no penetration drop off with these heat rounds over mid to long ranges. You just have to account for the 500 meters a second less shell velocity than the standard rounds. In terms of the actual alpha damage, you can see that it is somewhere in the middle. It's better than the Centurion Mark II and M50 Sherman, but it's not quite as good as the M47 Patton's 105mm gun with 390 alpha damage on its standard and premium rounds and 480 alpha damage on its HE rounds. In terms of the HE rounds on the Škoda T50, 50mm of penetration isn't great, so I don't recommend carrying too many of them, but the 900 meters a second shell velocity isn't too bad at all, and if you do find a lightly armored target with 3 shells within 3.6 seconds, you are dealing a lot of damage with this 3-shot autoloader. But this gun is a very nice gun. The 3-shot autoloader is a very good ambush gun, but it can be very awkward when you are reloading, and we'll get on to why that is as we look at the DPM and the gun handling of the Škoda T50's 100mm gun. So as you can see here, there are a lot of stats here covered in red and orange, meaning it's not the best and it is the worst in many aspects in terms of its gun handling and DPM. You have a 2.2 second aim time on this gun, a 0.35 accuracy, which isn't the worst in this comparison, but it isn't the best. The best goes to the Centurion Mark II. The DPM is a very bad 1824 with the 3-shot autoloader gun, and that is because of the 28 seconds it takes to reload your 3 shells, and you can get that down substantially, but it's still a pretty long reload, well over 20 seconds. You have 45 rounds of ammunition, 8 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation, and at the bottom there you have that interclip reload, which I've highlighted in green because 1.8 seconds means you get your shells out very fast with this autoloader and you don't have to expose yourself very much, but the other tanks have single fire guns. So in terms of this comparison then, you can see that it has the worst aim time in this comparison, the worst DPM, obviously has the worst reload because it is a 3-shot autoloader, it carries the fewest rounds of ammunition, it has the worst gun depression joint with the M50 Sherman. 8 degrees can be quite useful though on many different ridgelines, but it's not as good as the Centurion Mark II and M47 Patton's 10 degrees. But it does have a good gun elevation at 20 degrees of gun elevation, 2 degrees less than the M47 Patton, but much better than the Centurion Mark II and the M50 Sherman. But that DPM is pretty damn terrible when you compare it to something like the M50 Sherman's 75mm gun. Of course, it is less alpha damage at 200, but you have nearly 3000 DPM, so that's well over 1100 DPM better on the M50 Sherman, and that's why the 100mm single fire gun on the Škoda T50 is a viable option. And we're going to head over here to this second sheet just quickly, where I have put the stats of the Škoda T50's 3-shot autoloader gun, which we have just had a look at, compared to the 100mm gun on the Škoda T50, the single fire version. And I've also put the Centurion Mark II's 17-pounder, which is one of its stock guns there, because like the M50 Sherman, this has fantastic DPM. It has less alpha damage, poor penetration, but if you can make it work, then that DPM can really help you out. But in terms of this comparison, we're just going to be comparing to the Škoda T50 single fire gun. So As you can see, if you do fire the single fire gun, which is one of the stock guns on the Škoda T50, this is the second package. You lose a lot of shell velocity on your standard rounds, and they are AP rounds. However, you do have a much better premium shell velocity because you fire APCR as your secondary or premium ammunition choice, and you have much better shell velocity on your HE rounds at 1000 meters a second. You also lose quite a bit of penetration, but if you can make this work, it does make it worth it in terms of the gun handling and the DPM. As we'll get on to now, you can see down here that you have a 0.2 better aim time, you have a slightly worse accuracy, but only by 0.01, which you can boost up with your commander and equipment setup, and you boost your DPM by around 400, which can come in useful. And it is nice to have a single fire gun when someone's trying to all in you, and if you were with the autoloader, you might be reloading, and that would be the end of the game for you. Whereas if you have the single fire gun, you have that ability to fight back with that better DPM. So that is something to think about. If you know your weak spots, you feel comfortable with slightly less penetration, the main 269mm on the APCR is quite handy, and it will work in a lot of different scenarios. It's just whether you feel comfortable with it or whether you want to play that ambush style gameplay with the 3-shot autoloader. It's 8.6 seconds to reload 320 damage with this single fire 100mm gun, but all of the other stats stay the same 45 rounds, 8 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation, but it's by no means as good as the DPM on the M50 Sherman or this stock gun on the Centurion Mark II, which has 2858 DPM, 1.7 second aim time and 0.32 accuracy. So you do have to watch out for the gun handling, and well, the accuracy I should say, on this 100mm gun. But if you choose your commander and equipment setup correctly, this is a very viable alternative indeed. So what equipment and commander skills do I run on the Škoda T50? Well, in terms of my equipment, I run gun stabilizer, improved ventilation and traction system. In terms of my consumables, I run large med, large repair kit and the enhanced smoke screen to help me get out of harm's way and cover me whilst I am reloading. And in terms of my commander skills, I run Sixth Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Armor Angling and Track Mechanic. The armor angling is just because this is a crew that I have used on different heavy tanks, but it can come in useful to prevent you from taking extra damage that you don't want to be taken. You could switch this out for something like the firefighting or the fire prevention. That will help you stop your fires a little bit quicker. I think it's a 10% increase to your fire extinguishing speed. It's called fire extinguishing speed. It's a 10% increase to that, and it's called firefighting. Or you could use something like the clutch braking to improve your mobility, or maybe even the off-road driving to improve your handling on soft terrain. It's something that you can tweak to your liking, but this is my suggestion for that. You could also run situational awareness if you were to boost your view range up just that little bit more. But what are the stats of the Škoda T50 when I have applied my commander and equipment setup? Well, my view range has boosted up to 479 meters, which is nice. It's better than the 450 meters, but with this 3-shot autoloader, I'm going to be using my teammates' vision and only having to go forward and spot for myself if really necessary. In terms of my mobility, because I'm using the traction system to boost that mobility just that little bit more, I now have a top forward speed of 66 kilometers an hour. I've got a top reverse speed of 27.5 kilometers an hour, which is very handy indeed, especially on ridgelines when you're trying to back out of the way of someone trying to shoot you. Your hold reverse would be up to 46.2 degrees a second, which is absolutely phenomenal for running rings around these slower tanks. And your turret reverse boosted dramatically to 37.98 degrees a second. Let's just call that 38 degrees a second, which means that if people are trying to get around you, it's very easy and very mobile to get your gun around on targets, and nobody's going to be out traversing you. And in terms of your gun handling and DPM, then your aim time would be 2.07 seconds, which I am comfortable with, but you might want to run the whatever you call it to improve your gun handling, the advanced gun handling drive, that is the one with the 12% better shell aiming speed, but I find it perfectly fine with the 2.07 seconds, even with that pretty quick 1.8 second interclick reload. But if you're not comfortable with the aim time, switch it out, and I would take off the traction system because it's still very mobile, and I'd run that advanced gun lay and drive. In terms of my accuracy, as you can see, it has dropped to a fantastic level at 0.23. When you do let this thing aim in, it is very, very accurate indeed. And my DPM has gone up to 2,144, which is still the worst in this comparison, even when I haven't applied my command and equipment setup to the other tanks. So you can see how poor this DPM is with this 3-shot autoloader, but still it is better than that 1,824. And my reload for the 3 shells is now 23.28 seconds. What I would say about this 3-shot autoloader is, if you feel comfortable with positioning yourself on maps to take advantage of your teammates' vision, if you feel comfortable playing that ambush style and hiding yourself whilst you are reloading, then by all means go for this 3-shot autoloader. You burst out your damage very quickly, you get to a different position, choose your next opponent, and then you get it out again. But if you don't like having poor DPM, I would suggest trying the single fire gun and maybe carrying slightly more premium rounds than you normally would, because you would still make a profit in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. And finally, just to touch on the armour or lack of it, the strongest part of the Škoda T50's armour is the frontal turret armour at 120mm, which a lot of tanks are going to be able to butter through it. There are some different angles on the turret where they might catch an auto ricochet angle and you bounce, but it is very rare. In terms of the side of the turret, it's 100mm to the side of the turret. You have two 80mm parts on front of the hull, but the rest of the hull is 65mm, and the lower plate, which is absolutely ginormous, and things are going to butter this unless you angle at a extreme angle and get very lucky, but don't expect to bounce anything with this tank. Lastly, in terms of its side armour, you have 40mm of side armour, which means you can side scrape against lower caliber guns, but anything with a 121mm caliber gun or higher will overmatch your side, so you do have to be wary. But yeah, as soon as things get behind you, you have 40mm of rear armour as well, meaning that even HE rounds will have the ability to penetrate you. So you are a grass cannon, you have a pretty nice burst damage with the 3-shot autoloader, but you do have a terrible DPM, so it can be quite tricky to play, especially maybe for a newer player. The single fire gun would be a better option, but it's not too bad of a grind, and it's much better than the TVP-88. So that's it for the stats on the Škoda T50. I've got 2 gameplays now for you, and we're going to head into the first one. So we're now into the first game here in today's video on Siegfried line in the Škoda T50. We are fully upgraded and we're using the 3-shot auto-loading gun. In terms of my ammunition selection, at the bottom you can see that I carry 24 APCR rounds, 18 heat and 1 magazine, so 3 shells of HE, just in case I come up against something at the end of the game and I really need to have that extra damage and they're lightly armoured and I'm able to take them out. But right off the bat here, you can see that this thing has fantastic mobility, but you are a very chunky boy indeed, and your lower plate is absolutely massive, so people are going to be able to spot you with ease with the vision mechanics and the spotting mechanics, but also with the true vision system, especially when you are on a ridge line. This thing is going to be very easy to spot indeed. You have to be careful with this 8 degrees of gun depression, which is usable on many different ridge lines, but you do have to be careful on the higher ridge lines because you do have to expose yourself a little bit more, and being quite big, it can be a bit of a problem. And right now you're going to see me trying to get some sniping shots at some light tanks in the middle of the field, and this is where the auto-loading gun can be a bit annoying, because if I missed a couple of shells and then I have to go for a reload, I do have to wait for over 20 seconds to reload my 3 shells again. And with the single fire gun, I'd be able to just keep on firing, and I'd able to take out some tanks that I maybe wouldn't have been able to, and it might come back to haunt me with this autoloader mission shells later on in the game, which has happened before with this gun. But at the start of this battle, I'm just going to try and play it a little bit slow and try and get some shells in. You can see that I do whiff my first magazine there. I throw my enhanced smokescreen out, whilst I back up out of the way with the great reverse speed, and now I'm just going to wait for the reload. It's not the longest reload in the world if you have played some of the autoloaders in the World War II game mode, but this DPM in the Cold War game mode, even in Era 1, feels pretty damn terrible, and it can be extremely frustrating if you have a game that lasts quite a long time, quite a short time I should say, and the game's over before you're able to get, 1, 2, 3 magazines out, which is why I would say maybe the 100mm single fire gun would be a good option. But if the games are slightly more drawn out, you're going to be having some good results if you position yourself correctly and you hit all of your shells, because you can get your damage in very quickly and you can maneuver with the great mobility to a different flanking location, get some crossfire on your opponents, and you should be able to make this tank work for you. It's a little bit disappointing compared to the World War II Škoda T50, which is absolutely phenomenal. As you can see here, whilst I am loading, I was just maneuvering, going to a different location, but sometimes this gun will play up for you. You'll miss a couple of shells and you'll hit your final one, and you're waiting over 20 seconds just for that one shell, which can be quite frustrating. It might suit some players that aren't comfortable going forwards and getting into those engagements where you're using your DPM to outplay your opponents. I say it's probably a bad choice if you're a really new player, because you're going to be taken out very quickly. You're going to be exposing yourself more often. You're not going to be used to the different positions on the maps, and the 100mm gun will give you a best chance of getting the most out of your games. However, if you're a more experienced player and you're someone that can utilize different positions, this gun might be your favorite. It's just personal preference. I like autoloaders. They're very powerful, especially in the World War II game mode, but in the Cold War game mode, this is one of the first full-blooded autoloaders that fires a higher caliber gun. Usually it's like tanks with smaller caliber guns that reload a lot quicker, and you can see the gun blooms out quite a lot there when you're on the move, which is why run and gun as a commander skill comes in handy with this gun, and why you might want to invest into an enhanced gun lay and drive instead of running the traction system like I do. I just take the chance with it because I like to have that little bit extra mobility, and maybe against some of the lightly armoured tanks and tanks that weigh less than me, I'll be able to round them for a substantial amount of damage later on in the battle. But 1650 hit points doesn't last too long, especially when you don't have the best armour. However, you are going to see in this game that we're going to block a few rounds, showing you that it does have enough armour to block lower caliber rounds and enough armour to keep you in the game. And running the armour angling can help just take, I think, 5% less damage throughout the course of the battle. But when you come up behind someone like this M47 pattern, which we compared this tank to in the review, it can come in handy having an autoloader if you were able to get all 3 shells in. You can see that I'm getting frustrated here, and I wanted to include this replay because it's a very good indication of a kind of typical game you can have in the Škoda T50, where I could now be up to 3k damage easily, above 3k, if I had hit all my shells and I hadn't bounced. You do have some pretty good penetration, but the thing is with APCR rounds, you lose penetration over distance and they're not great against really sort of rounded or very well angled armour. I could have been firing more heat, however that does struggle against spaced armour, so it's kind of a catch-22. It's just one of those games that's a bit frustrating, but as you're going to see, this is a slightly more drawn-out game. The games are sometimes already over within 5 minutes, and the slightly drawn-out games were able to put in a good amount of damage. And this is the perfect example of a 3-shot autoloader doing its work. We get 1 in there to the T-34, second track, and the third through the tracks to keep him in place, and our NM116 takes him out. And we're going to get into this little nook here whilst we reload and then try and come from a different position, find a different opponent, and hopefully take them out. But this NM116's come for us. I fire my or I think he fires his smoke screen, which actually helps me out a little bit. And fortunately the reload wasn't so bad because we boosted it up with our commander and equipment setup, and we managed to take him out. The mobility there helps us as we juke that tank coming after us. We fire our enhanced smoke screen, he gets caught up in the smoke and he gets taken out from the opposite direction from Take Care Bro, who was actually my bro in this game, helping me out there, taking him out, and we managed to use the fantastic mobility to reverse out of the way of that smoke screen to avoid him firing through it and keep us in the game. So this game is a complete mix of missed shots. You can see the autoloader working some of the time, and when it does, it's very, very handy indeed. You've seen how the mobility really does help this tank out in certain situations, and it has enough armour to deflect lower caliber rounds, and this is just a typical round that I was having in the Škoda T50. I haven't enjoyed it as much as I thought I would be, but it's by no means one of the worst tanks. It's just the DPM really does hold it back with this autoloader. And again, you might want to try the single fire 100mm gun. I don't have any replays with the single fire gun in today's video because I know that a lot of people will choose the autoloading gun, but I definitely want to reiterate that it is a viable alternative and you still have some pretty decent penetration, especially with your premium APCR rounds with the single fire gun. So in this game, it's a very close game. It's 3 versus 3, and now we're going to be able to put this gun to use. Unfortunately, I made the mistake with autoloaders of only reloading one shell. I didn't realise I was running low on the APCR. I've only just realised myself again whilst watching this replay right before I fired there that I made that mistake, and that's probably another reason why I wanted to include this specific replay, because you have to keep tabs on what ammunition you are carrying at the bottom, how many you have left. We didn't want to play chicken with that FE 4005 for too long because we are on 65 hit points and a gust of wind would be able to take us out. Stupidly, we go out again. I thought he had fired and we're at an extreme angle and we bounced his very high caliber gun there. Very, very lucky for us indeed that we managed to get through that situation, but it just goes to show that you've got enough angling on the front to get lucky sometimes, and sometimes that RNG and that luck is all you need to get through the battle. So we used the smoke screen there to reload, we've reversed out of the way, and it's just this Centurion 2 left. I'm a one shot for him now, and I'm a one shot for a falling tree if I was near one. I'm just asking my NM116, who has helped me throughout this battle and been a great teammate, to either use my distraction or create a distraction for me to come up behind the Centurion 2 and deliver 2 shells that would finish him off. Now, it sounds like he's fired there, so we're going to go forward, put 2 shells in, and that's typical autoloader things. That Centurion 2 had no chance within 1.8 seconds, 2 shots out, and we finish him off. So that's it for the first game there, with a very standard game in the Škoda T50. We do finish top of our team, even though we made many mistakes in that game. 72,000 silver profit. 3 kills, 4.7k damage, 951 assistance, and 1390 blocked, and a lot of that blocked from an FV 4005, so I'm going to count myself lucky for this replay, but that's it for this one. Let's head on into the second gameplay. Righty ho, so we're into the second and final gameplay of today's video. Again in the Škoda T50, which is handy as this is all about the Škoda T50 in today's video. We're on Westfield. We are fully upgraded, and again we are using the 3-shot auto-loading gun. So we're going to head to a position to hopefully use all of the light tanks in this game vision to help us get some shots out early on. This side of the map will have much better ridgelines for me to cower behind as I reload, because it does take again over 20 seconds to reload the 3 shells. I'm taking a wide berth here because the camera rating on this tank isn't very good at all due to its very large nature, but we get behind this ridgeline I wanted to get to and we should be safe unless people come right round to my left there where that FV101 is trying to get, and also if they get down below me. But this is a pretty good location to pop out, get a few shells in, pop back behind the ridgeline, reload, and fortunately for us this is going to be one of those games that's a bit more drawn out, and this is the kind of result you can have in the Škoda T50 if you just have one of those games that takes a little bit longer to finish and the teams are a little bit more even. So we managed to get some shots there into the FV101. I was getting into the sort of middle to late stages of a play session here, so my aim was slightly better than usual. Unfortunately, that medium tank is caught on that ridgeline. I popped my enhanced smokescreen for him to hopefully avoid shells coming into him and help him get out of harm's way, and maybe it's the good karma that allowed me to have a good game here. Who knows? But it's always nice to be a good teammate. Those smokescreens can help you, but they can also help your teammates. So definitely use it, because every gun in the game is handy indeed. And now that light tank's back, or a different light tank I should say. It's the Type 63-1 here. Fortunately for us, that's a slightly larger and slower light tank, so we're able to get 3 shots in there to finish him off, and that's the power of this 3-shot autoloader. You're able to deal that 960 damage within 3.6 seconds to take out tanks that are on around sort of 900, because you often low roll due to the new player RNG that has slightly less damage that they take, and also because of the armor angling skill, which reduces damage, which means you can low roll quite a lot in this tank, which can be frustrating because you do have to wait for that 22-23 seconds if you choose to run the same kind of equipment and commander setup that I run. We preempt a shot there on the FV101, but he gets taken out by my older brother, the TVP T5051, of which I will have a review coming out as soon as I get some more gameplay in that tank. But we make the most of our next 2 shells, getting a couple into that Type 62, and we're up to 2k damage. The game's been going for 3 minutes, and we've only managed to reload, 3 magazines, so you can see how bad this DPM is, and it's frustrating now because I have targets to shoot, and a lot of time people are asking for help and they see you just sitting there behind a ridgeline in the Škoda T50. Maybe they don't know it's an autoloader, or maybe they think that you're reloaded, but it can be extra frustrating. But it's also very satisfying when you can get all 3 shells into an opponent quickly, just like we did there, and then we're back onto the reload, which is why with the commander skills it's best to do everything you can to improve the DPM. If you're extremely comfortable with positioning on the map, you could run the combat rations, which would improve your view range, your gun handling and your DPM just that little bit more. However, this smoke screen will save you more often than not, and for the extra sort of second it might help you, then I don't think it's really worth it, because it won't make a massive difference. You can see there that the bloom is slightly higher than it could be with this gun, because I don't run the enhanced gun lay and drive. Again, that is a personal choice, and I have sort of switched back and forth. The gun handling would be slightly better, or the aim time anyway, if I was to run that enhanced gun lay and drive, but the traction system does allow me to boost that top speed up and my traverse speed and get out of the way of shots, and also keep up with some of the light tanks in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. And now we're shooting at a T95E3, which is a kind of 50-50 there, whether we would penetrate, maybe a 60% chance due to the penetration drop off. At that kind of range, firing at the front of a tank that doesn't have any space armor over the front, it would have been better for me to fire heat. But that is the disadvantage of an autoloader. Once you have reloaded your magazine, you aren't able to switch out all 3 shells for a different ammunition selection. You just have to fire them and hope that you penetrate. I'm not sure if my eyesight was playing up here, but I was firing at a tree. I obviously thought that T95-3 was still there, however he wasn't, and I'm just scanning the horizon now for different targets for me to shoot. I probably now, in hindsight, should have just reloaded, and I would have been nearly reloaded. I reload now, and that was a misplay. I should have reloaded when I thought that I wasn't going to fire in the next sort of 5 to 6 seconds. That's when you should sort of make the decision to reload, so you are loaded, fully loaded for your next engagement. And if I had have reloaded when I should have, I would have already been able to fire at this T95E3 and the other medium that's towards the left of me. But as you can see, when these games are more drawn out, you have that extra advantage of being able to take your time, pick your opponents, and boost your damage numbers up. That T95B3 did juke us there, but we managed to get 1 into him, and we also got 1 into that medium tank to the left of us, finishing him off. We're up to 4.3k damage. It's a very close game. It's 4 against 3 with us having the extra tank advantage. and now I'm just letting my teammates know I'm reloading. That's a good idea to let them know with the command wheel, because maybe people would make a push thinking you're reloading, able to cover them, and you're not able to. And again, did you notice what I've done? I've only reloaded the one shell because I didn't realise that I was running low on the APCR, so that really is something to keep in mind. It's just something that I struggle with as well to constantly think about during the battle, but you do have to remind yourself you're an autoloader, you are going to run out of a certain ammunition, so maybe it's best to reload your premium ammunition so you have a full magazine. Again, I'm not worried about showing everyone my mistakes. I'm not the absolute best player in the game. I'm using the knowledge that I have to try and get the best games that I have, and I'm letting you know my weaknesses as well, so you're able to make your gameplay stronger. So with the True Vision system here, and we have our 3 heat shells, we have seen our opponents there on the top of the hill. We bounce one, it gets absorbed, I believe, because we're firing heat, and I believe the second one or the third one gets absorbed as well. But the good thing about firing heat at this distance, like I have said numerous times in today's video, is that you don't lose your penetration over distance, which means that we have a fantastic ability to penetrate at this kind of range if we're able to hit our shells because of the slower shell velocity, and we don't aim at spaced armor or try and go through the sides of tanks and through their tracks at this distance. We can see that tank in the distance. The 8 degrees of gun depression here is just not good enough to use that position. I was trying to sit in the bush so that I would be unspotted as I was firing. However, we're going to pull down here to the lower portion of this ridge, and we're going to make the most of the True Vision system here, trying to fire at that tank. We get 2 absorbed and 1 bounces, and that's the problem with having heat as a secondary ammunition choice. Apart from that ability to penetrate over the longer distances, it's very hard to go through the sides of tanks, and it doesn't like going through spaced armor, so that can cost you. However, when someone comes full side on at a mid-range to you, right in the middle of an open field, we're able to use our teammate's vision there to get 3 shots into him, and our TVP T5051, our older brother, manages to finish off that T95E3, and it's 2-on-2, so another very close game. And I think you're getting the theme here that these closer games allow this tank and the TVP as well to perform better with their autoloaders. I'm going to come now and help this TVP. He's let me know that he's reloading. However, I'm not, so I'm going to try and get a few shells into him. I'm umming and ahhing whether I should just go in, but it looks like he's reloaded. I'm expecting the T95E3 to fall back. Unfortunately, I think the TVP bounced 1 or 2 shells there, which means he didn't take him off. In hindsight, I should have just gone down and finished him off, because now it's 1 versus 2. I pop my smoke screen to try and obscure their vision as I'm trying to reload. I act like I'm going to be going to the left, where in fact I'm just going to stay behind this ridge. I'm very confident if I can keep my distance with this autoloader of taking this one down for my team. I have the shells to take out both of these tanks. I'm going to make sure I aim all 3 of these shells in perfectly, take the extra time to make my shells count and take out that T95E3. And now I have the chance to use my mobility to reload and get a different position on the last remaining medium tank. So we've blocked 390 damage, but we have picked up 6.4k direct damage, which is very nice indeed. And it's just this longer nature game, the perfect combination of a longer game and a better map for us to sit behind ridgelines and use the vision from the light tanks that are on our team. The enemy tank's now on 38 hit points. I'm very confident, even if I bounce 2, I should be able to either ram him or finish him off with the 3rd shell. We're just going to go for the ram because it's more fun, and maybe it'll be better for a screenshot, who knows, and then we fire a celebration shot into the dead wreck. How disrespectful. But we finished there in 2nd place on that team, 106,000 silver profit. That's only a first class show, and people do play this tank very well. 1610 base XP, 4 kills, 6.4k direct damage, and that 390 damage block. So a very good game there, showing what is capable in the Škoda T50 if you have the time with this autoloader. But bear in mind, this DPM is horrific, and you might be better off firing the single fire gun. But that's it for today's video on the Škoda T50 in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. Thank you all so much for your support. Another video will be coming out very soon, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.